education sector and a lot of issues concerning Nigeria's education sector. And joining us this morning to dissect this issue is Professor Solomon Ogbu. Professor Solomon Ogbu is of the University of Abuja. He is a barrister at law. Professor, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
And also joining us this morning is Dr. Charles Nwakeaku. He is Associate Professor of Public Administration and he is from the Nassau State University, Kefi. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Welcome, viewers.
All right, let's take you through the education budget allocation before we start the interview proper. In 2015, Nigeria's education sector was allocated a sum of 392.2 billion naira, and in 2016, that figure dropped to 369.6 billion naira. So from 392 billion to 369 billion in 2016, and that figure went up to 550.6 billion naira in 2017, and also went up into 2018 budget to 605.8 billion naira. In 2019, the sum of 620.5 billion naira has been allocated in the budget, which is currently at the National Assembly. So those are the figures that have been allocated for Nigeria's education sector. And the federal government has also come out to say that it spent a sum of 49 billion naira in feeding public primary school students across the 24 states, in the country in the last 2 years. That's coming from the Vice President, who also says that over 183 million has been invested so far in the National School Feeding Program. Now, we will be looking at the education industry, like I said. Let's start with Professor Ogbu. Looking at the allocation looking at the allocation so far in the education industry, would we say that the figures match what is needed in the nation's education sector?
Far from it. The figures we've been getting, I think in the last 3-4 years, are nothing to write home about. Especially when Nigeria claims to be the giant of Africa, we also claim to have the strongest economy in Africa today. And if you look at what are allocated to education sector in some other African countries that are much weaker, economical and otherwise, it is irritating. It's on record that Nigeria's budget on education is the least in Africa for so many years now. I have the statistics here. I don't mind reading it. Okay. Let me quickly go through it. Botswana allocates an average of 19% to education every year. Tunisia 17%, Lesotho 17%, Burkina Faso 16.3%, Ghana 31%, South Africa 25.3%, Cote d'Ivoire 30%, Morocco 26.4%, Kenya 23%, Swaziland 24%, Nigeria, I want to cut it short by reading out that of Nigeria. Nigeria 7%. Yeah. If we just oppose it with all the figures are read out with respect to other countries, I think it is irritating. And what does that tell us? It suggests that Nigeria as a country doesn't attach a high degree of importance to education. And it is unfortunate.
Now let me come to you, Dr. Charles. Now he has said that we have not attached importance to the education sector. Now I want to ask you, do you think we have over 13.2 million children out of school in the country? Do you think he just reeled out some figures, and we also reeled out some figures talking about budget allocations to education? Are our leaders rattled enough about the state of the state our education sector is in currently?
Thank you so much. Before I answer your question, in addition to what he said, what percentage of these allocations was released? This 2018, in December, the DG Budget Office told us that the performance was about 39%. That was government view. But the real view is that it was less than 30%. So reading these figures, how much was actually released or implemented? That is the issue. And that of 2019, the estimate is even 464.24 billion, not up to 600. And so it's about 7%, as he said. But even in the implementation, not up to 5%. And so the issue of the one you've raised and what they said they have used in feeding the, I think we have a misplacement of priority. Education is the building block of the economy of every country. Every country you can think of is education. UNESCO actually stipulates 26%. From the figures you have read out here, you see that some other, like South Africa, 23.something%, is very close to what UNESCO stipulates. But Nigeria, 7% in principle, but in practice, is less than 4%. It's a far cry from what is needed to handle education. And that's why the leaders, our leaders are not serious about education. Their children, and the reason is obvious, their children do not attend schools in Nigeria. That is the thing. Otherwise, if their children do attend school, they will make sure that our schools are functional. Why is the university having problem with ASU? Okay, yes, the vice president said that the federal government has spent over 49 billion on feeding our populace in primary school. Is primary education the responsibility of federal government? We know that education is under concurrent list. Do you understand? Feeding children is also important, but is that the primary responsibility of federal government? Now, ASU is asking 20 billion for an allowance of their members. If government had deployed these resources there, perhaps the issue of strike could have been reduced. So it's a misplacement of priority. Our leaders are not serious with education. And it's education that every other profession, whether you talk of engineers, talk of medical doctors, talk of anything, it's education. And that's why if you if you do not finance your educational system well, what do you get? Half-baked graduates.
All right, now let's, apart from the issue of funding, because so I'm sure funding is probably what you say houses the whole of these issues. But Professor Ogbu, what are the other challenges, with them in the education sector?
Well, principally, one would expect that in the developing world, developing country like Nigeria, that the bulk of the money to be used to finance education should come from the federal government. Where people say, why can't individual countries try to do something from which they can get some money internally? That is internally generated. But that is not easy. It requires a lot of money for such a venture to take off. And most universities don't have that. And that's why most of them try to rely on federal government. Like my colleague has said, I think the UNESCO benchmark is 26%. That means even if you cannot get that, you should do something very close to that. But what we have year by year is oscillating between 6%, 7%, and so on. That is grossly inadequate for our education to make progress. And that explains why a lot of Nigerian youths are migrating to other countries, to such countries, small countries like the Republic of Benin, Ghana, and so on, simply because their provision for education are a lot more attractive, much better than what it is in Nigeria. So it's a huge problem on our hands.
Now, Dr. Charles, he just mentioned the issue of migrate. We are having brain drain in Nigeria as a result of the fact that our education system are not working. And you mentioned the fact that most of our leaders, their children don't go to school in Nigeria. Do you think there should be deliberate effort on the part of government and those that make policies to ensure that probably we have the children of our leaders schooling in Nigeria? Would that bring will that make the system a little bit better?
Of course, yes. You see, he talked about our youth migrating to other countries. He didn't remember to talk about our
lecturers.
Yes, lecturers. You will now have brain drain, especially now that the strike is there. If the strike persists, many lecturers will migrate. And you don't produce a professor in a year. And so, the thing is that if leaders agree to let their children attend school in Nigeria, they make sure that the schools are functional. Because I wouldn't want my children to be half-baked. I make sure that, in fact, if I had my way, every leader, just as people declare their assets, every leader should declare for us that his children should attend schools in Nigeria from primary through university education. And you see a change. The same thing in health. And that's why we keep on patronizing other countries, because the leaders do not feel it. Their children are abroad. They are at Harvard and other well-equipped universities, but they don't want to equip our universities here. And so it's a terrible thing. So if leaders, just as people declare their assets, let people declare, even people who are campaigning now, that they are ready to ensure that their children attend schools in Nigeria. They wouldn't want their children to be at home.
So, Dr. Nwakeaku, you're saying that Nigeria will be having an issue of migration crisis in terms of lecturers?
Yes.
Is that,
Brent,
how bad is it in terms of movement? Because you are in the system.
Yes, it is terrible. You see, last time the ASO strike lasted for almost a year, many lecturers left. And so this time, it's my appeal that government should do everything reasonable possible.
And most of these lecturers were trained with government funds and...
Yeah, it's not that they like it. Most of the lecturers, ask Professor Ogbu, you have children in the university. I have. Every lecturer has children in the university, so we are not happy. We are not happy. But we are thinking of an area. So the brain drain is going to affect us. And when it, especially there are areas you don't have enough. There are areas you don't have enough. And by the time they migrate,
specific disciplines.
And what are we talking?
So brain drain, if I should take over from there, it's already having a serious impact on the Nigerian society. Because before and after most of these strikes we have embarked upon, brain drain has been going on for a long time now. Our professors, engineers and so on, a lot of them are applying their trade outside the country simply because we don't have the enabling environment for them to even practice their trade successfully. That's why a lot of them are leaving this country. Of course, the conditions are a lot better. Who would not like to enjoy better conditions of service than it is within your own country? And that's why a lot of people are running away from this country.
Let's also look at the contribution of, we'll say, the workforce, looking at lecturers and other people who are in service. Will we also say that lecturers, now looking at the whole cadre, have positioned themselves also in a way to ensure that they are also contributing to ensure that our education sector, despite the challenges, can still manage or can still be churn out graduates that can meet what is happening currently, because we have a situation where they always say that what is coming out from the universities is not meeting what is happening currently in the like I say, the workspace.
Yes, as a matter of fact, every lecturer should be patriotic enough to put in his best to make sure that you manage the situation the way you see it. But there's a limit to what you're going to manage. As a matter of fact, they go to our university. Some of them are glorified secondary schools. You don't have equipment. You have some universities running engineering courses. They don't have workshops. And so when...
The public schools, you mean? Because most private, public universities, you mean? Or
well, public university, but come and think of it. Private universities are not better either, because the funding is much. The funding is much. And how many people can attend private universities? How many people can afford? Some private universities, students pay as much as between 1.5 million to 2.5 million. How many Nigerians can afford that? As a matter of fact, education is supposed to be handled by the government. Look at all the most education philosophers. Plato, for example, read the public when we go out. Get Plato what he said about education. He said that education should be the business of the state. State should provide education. Read Aristotle, the same thing. And that the state should finance education, because it's education that the quality of education will determine the quality of every other thing in the economy. Look at our economy today. Oil is our mainstay, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
How many Nigerians are into oil? Mention the first 7 oil companies in Nigeria. Shell, Chevron, Ajib, Mobil. Is any of them owned by Nigerians? So foreigners control our economy because our educational system is not functional enough. What is education? Education is the process of acquiring skills that we enable you conquer your environment. Conquering your environment means harnessing the resources within your environment. And Nigerians harnessing the resources within the environment. How come foreigners are in charge of our economy? All of us are struggling for money oil. Who is in charge of oil? Foreigners drill oil for us. They transport the crude oil through foreign shipping lines, and the oil is sold in dollars. So Nigerians have no hand in producing what they
Or even if they do just a few hands.
nothing. And we're exporting crude oil, and we're looking for employment. Do you know the multiplier effect if we are processing crude oil in Nigeria?
Okay, Dr. Charles, let me hold you there now and bring in Professor Ogbu. Before you contribute to what you want to say, now there are locations for getting infrastructure invested in place. Now, is it possible that there are leakages in the system? Talking about corruption in the education system, when we don't have monies being utilized for what they were allocated for.
Leakages are always there. In whatever aspect of the society we are talking about, education inclusive. I understand what you mean. It means that sometimes reasonable amount of money is released to the education sector, but it doesn't get to the proper places, to the management of the various universities. Some people have a way of siphoning part of it as well, and therefore in the final analysis, university management don't have enough to do what they're supposed to do. Before I go further, my colleague made allusion to what obtains in the private universities. Yes, I think the conditions there are a little better than what obtains in the public sector, simply because the proprietors of these universities are millionaires. You and I know that, billionaires and so on. And to that extent, they're able to put most of the necessary facilities in place.
Would it be that they are billionaires or they are business-minded,
Yes,
and they understand that this infrastructure needs to be in place so that people can come to the school?
Of course, that is
and also get value for their money.
Yeah, also the way government should ensure that infrastructures are in place so that people can also attend their schools.
Yeah, because of that, even if they don't have enough on their own to do what they're supposed to do, they don't have to get money get loans and so on from banks and so on. They have the collateral that we convince the bankers that, yes, this person is creditworthy and so on. So that is why they have an edge. But the side effect, the ugly side of it is that they pass on all the money they're spending to the students. And that's why the students are told to pay so much school fees and so on. So in some cases, up to 1 million. I have a child who is in one of the private universities in the country, and that university charges 600,000 per session, and that money must be paid before the student is allowed to cross the gate.
That is aside other
yes, apart from other things, you must give money to your child to feed, and a lot of other things. So that's why we are emphasizing that federal government should try all that is possible, all within its power, to provide enough money for the funding of the public universities.
All right, Prof, let me also, you want
this leakage
issue,
sorry.
okay.
He said there is always leakage. You asked whether the money is being allocated, and maybe the problem is utilization. Look at the cross of matter of between us and federal government. What federal government agree with has to be released for funding is not being released. There was this 2009 agreement between federal government and ASO. And then there was this 2012 memorandum of understanding, 2013. And they agreed that federal government, in fact, ASO demanded 1.3 trillion to revitalize the public universities. Federal government accepted to release 1.1 trillion. And then it was agreed that the release would be in 5 tranches, 220 billion per annum. Except 2013, when the administration of Jonathan released it, it hasn't been released again. So what I'm saying is that government has also not been forthcoming in releasing that thing. Is it a thing? So let it be leakage. Yes, there will always be leakage, but let it be released. 220 billion, not a penny, was released. So from where are they going to fund the university.
But some people will also want to raise the view that ASU is somewhat in a way being, will I say, not really use the word, like a challenge also in the education industry. How would you see that? Because we see what is happening in Uni-Ilorin, because like Uni-Ilorin, the university in Ilorin moved out of ASU, and since then they've had like a smooth sail in their education calendar.
Is it the smooth sail that is important? What of the product? The process
But
is
the school is up there in the ranking.
Wait, let me tell you. Why are we having Empower? Why are we having all these different programs geared towards equipping? The truth is that the people that are produced, universities, polytechnics, do not have the requisite skills. And that is why you're having Empower and the other thing, to make them acquainted. But if you fund the universities and other things well, you don't need Empower. You don't need all these things, because they will have the necessary skill from there.
Professor, we want to add to that, because we are rounding up.
The public is not fully informed about what usually transpires between ASU and the government representatives. Oftentimes you see in one of the papers that so much has been released. I think about two weeks ago, I saw bogus figures and claimed to have been released by federal government. But at a recent meeting of ASU with a government representative, there was no evidence to show that much has been released. So and so on. So government is like talking from two sides of its mouth.
Okay.
So on one side, you say it has released.
All right, the way forward, quickly. What is the way forward?
It's for federal government to wake up to its responsibilities.
All right, federal government should wake up. Dr. Nwakeaku, we have to go. What's the final word?
Government should see education as a serious business.
Okay.
It's what you invest that
you also get.
Let's fund our educational system.
All right.
And the professionals we want.
Okay. See education as a serious business. We have to go, Prof.
We talk a lot about research and development.
Okay.
It's very vital
R&D also
for the
should
education of. That's why the developed world is far ahead of us, because they make a lot of financial provision for them.
All right, Prof. We have to leave it at that. R&D also should be included. Professor Solomon Ogbu, University of Abuja, also a barrister at law, joined us to look at the issues surrounding education. He's called for more focus in research and development. Also, Dr. Charles Nwakeaku, Associate Professor of Public Administration from the Nassau State University, joined us this morning. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. And that's it for the program today. I am Ehizo J. Momo. Do have yourselves a lovely day.
And I'm Christiana Amadu. Bye for now.